Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Christina and it's time for truth. Today's Tuesday, March 24th. We're into springtime. Hope everybody's enjoying their day. When I closed off my episode yesterday, I had mentioned that I had done, by some magic, I have no idea how, a posting that I was doing turned into a short. That has over 3,000 views. The craziest thing, my videos are most popular when they're either geese or church bells ringing. And I'm okay with that. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm still learning about YouTube. I don't know, all of the things or how to do all of the things, but I see in some of the other channels that I watch how they take a portion of their video and somehow turn it into a short. And so I did that magically somehow, or maybe it was just because the church bells ringing was such a little amount of seconds. I think it was 14 seconds that it automatically made it into a short. Don't really know, but we're finding out. So I really enjoyed sharing with you all about the, trip down memory lane for the castle tour in Ireland. And I had actually, I went down and looked at the printer yesterday afternoon, and I'm like, oh, there's the photos I was trying to figure out where they went and couldn't find. So when I was mentioning the boats at Ross Castle, really beautiful, the scenery on the Ring of Kerry is just amazing, and also the Ross Castle with the colorful boats, so I wanted to share that. And also I spoke about the gentleman who was in charge of the Raptor program at Adair Manor. Such a nice man. And here's a picture of him. Make sure that he's in the screen there. Yeah, he was so informative. So you could tell that the birds loved him. Yeah, amazing. It was such a great experience. And then also I had printed out this picture of Bryn Athyn Cathedral. That was in the neighborhood that I lived in Huntington Valley. But every time I would drive by here, I would look up on those spires. I guess that's what they're called at the very tips. And most often there would be a red-tailed hawk or two sitting up there. So that was always a topic of conversation. And then this was one of the, because I love the doorways and the entranceways, this is at the top of one of the entrance doors at Bryn Athyn Cathedral. And the ironwork is just spectacular. Yeah. So I wanted to share that with everybody. And then just to kind of catch up as far as sharing about, trips, places, seeing things, doing things. And sometimes you just have to be at home, right? And our home should be a sanctuary. It should be a safe place. It should be, a place that we want to be, certainly. And that's going to kind of lead me into the topic for today, which is, where we live, how we live, sometimes where we can only live, based upon any number of factors, and, what we choose to do with the space that we inhabit. So that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today. It's going to involve also homeowners associations and talking about those, because I have a history, of course, with homeowners associations. I've lived in them. I've managed them as a property manager, which I will admit, I did that briefly because I didn't want to see how other people choose to live, because what a nightmare. I don't choose to live in a pigsty. And that was a lot of what I saw when I was managing residential properties, apartment buildings, condominiums, things like that, where you have to enter other people's living spaces. Yeah. I changed career paths and got into commercial property management, which I'll talk about more in maybe this episode and definitely another one, because that's a great career path if you're looking for something that gives you freedom of movement during the day, You go places, you meet other people, you're orchestrating support for, properties, shopping centers, office buildings, things like that. And so you can have an office job, but you still have the freedom to get out and go a little bit. And that was important for me because I'm a bit spastic and hyper, and I don't do well sitting behind a desk. So at any rate, I have managed Homeowners Association and lived in them. And the basis for comparison is that I live in an HOA currently. And when my mom actually lived down here in Delaware, her home was in a homeowners association too. So they're prevalent. They happen, even if it's an apartment complex, you still are bound by rules and regulations. And homeowners associations are like a step above the rules and regulations of just like an apartment complex, because it's it's the input of the homeowners. So there's a vested interest. So my first real experience with living, in an actual homeowners association was in Gaithersburg, Maryland, of all places. And I had moved there from Redondo Beach, California, with my first husband, because his job changed. Hughes Aircraft Company used to be in El Segundo, California, and it closed down. Basically, things shifted as far as aerospace, and where it was operating out of, also working with the military. So Gaithersburg was around the Rockville area, DC. So there was a lot of civil service and private companies that provided services to the military, which is a huge industry. Kind of like HOAs when they're not run properly, just like an industry of nothingness. And that's what I'm experiencing now currently. But where I lived in Gaithersburg, it was a CC&R's conditions, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. They were back from 1960s. Yeah, 1960s. And Gaithersburg has a community that's called Montgomery Village. And it's rather large. It's all different styles of living. Single-family homes, townhomes. I believe they even had like low-rise condos. They had the mall around there. At any rate, I rented a townhouse. My first husband and I, we rented a townhouse. I actually found a picture. That was one of his first snowfalls, but that's a picture he took of me in front of the blazer we had. And I had actually left, we had actually left our other car. This was in 1988, March of 1988. Fascinating. So we rented an end unit townhouse. You can see the townhouses. It's just a row of like maybe 8 or 10 units, 3 stories. So we rented it from this really nice lady. I think even the company that my first husband was hired by and who moved us paid the expenses for moving. I believe that we found them through that company because they'll do placement for executives. In fact, I see on the very edge here is the edge of my little red pickup truck. All right, can you see that? Right there is the edge of my little red pickup truck that I bought to commute to work with, because we left the little sports car in California in storage and just brought the one vehicle, the Blazer. And then I bought that little truck for commuting, which I just like driving a little truck. It was a little extra cab Toyota, cute little truck. And that's around the time that trucks were becoming popular and people were buying them for commuting and driving and enjoying. Well, unbeknownst to us, as renters, you're not allowed to have trucks in this development at all. No open bed vehicles. This was from a 1960s CC&R, conditions, covenants, and restrictions. So I started getting great big huge plastered stickers on the windshield of my vehicle saying, you can't park here. You can't park here. And so we're like calling our landlady, who was a wonderful person. She had no idea either, and hadn't provided us with, under the lease, the CC&Rs that we were supposed to abide by as tenants. So long story short, it was a nightmare. I mean, anywhere on their property, you could not park this little vehicle that I had purchased, brand new. So then I thought, okay, well, we live at the end of the section on an end unit. There was a road that came this way that was not a big road, like a country road, because this was back in, well, as I said, back in 1988. So I thought, well, that's off their property, so I'll just park behind our, adjacent to our unit, and then basically walk through the little bit of woods that was our front door area. I could see my truck from where I would be walking to my front door. And I thought, well, I'll do that. So then I did that for a couple of days. I mean, they were relentless. These people, once they were tracking me down. So I started parking out there on the street. They put up no parking signs on the street. Yeah, so I couldn't even park anywhere now. It was crazy. So we're trying to talk to them, like, okay, we're going to sell the vehicle. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Like, you can't park it here until then. Like, not even a grace period, nothing. So they were like, I don't even know. Like, I had never encountered anything like that before in my life. So I ended up talking with, I started knocking on doors and asking people what was going on, if they'd had any issues, if my truck was bothering them, if somebody had made a complaint. Like, I wanted to know. And I think it was the neighbors that were 2 doors down from us. She was like, I don't even know. But in retrospect, I think that was who did it. Anyway, we were left to contend with it. And my landlady too, because they started citing her and fining her. And she's like, you guys have to do something. And I'm like, yeah, well, you should have done something. Like, give us the rules and regulations and let us know. Like, you knew we were coming in from out of state. But anyways, so we ended up heading back west, and that was the way that we dealt with that. So Maryland was like, bad. And what I dealt with trying to deal with my mom in Maryland too, several decades later, because this was in 1988, and then I was dealing with the state of Maryland elder agencies and ombudsmans and everything else in 2020, 2018, 2017. Yeah, so bad. Anyways, back to the HOAs. The one in Maryland was a nightmare, so we ended up moving, and then then we bought a home. My first husband and I bought a home in South San Jose, after living in an apartment for a short period of time in Mountain View, California. We bought a home in South San Jose, and it was actually part of a little HOA, Homeowners Association. They had a pool, they had street lights, they had, sidewalks. These are things that I don't have right now in my HOA. Nothing. No sidewalks, no street lights, no community center, no pool, which is fine. We didn't buy into an HOA to have those amenities. That's not something that we would necessarily use. So that was fine with us, and it's worked great both times that we've owned property in this neighborhood. We sold one house and bought another one in the same neighborhood. That's how much we love this neighborhood. But it's an HOA, so things can always go south. So at any rate, moved back, lived in South San Jose, had that little homeowners association, enjoyed the pool. And then I detonated that whole situation, but that's a different topic for a different story for a different time. But then I didn't live in an HOA again for a very long time until where I live in an HOA now. Prior to being in this HOA, my mom, when she moved down here several years before she became unwell, and I ended up moving down here too with my husband and I. Her HOA was brand new. It was a brand new development. So in actuality, the builder was still in charge of the HOA. And this is what happens in new developments. The builder maintains control of the voting. It's not really a homeowners association yet because the homes are still being built. That's the best way to say that. So once there is a certain number of occupied homes, then the builder will then initiate for the board to be, excuse me, for the board to be voted on. And then the Homeowners Association will become, enacted by the bylaws and CC&Rs and whatever else. So before, I think it was even before we moved down here. No, it wasn't. It was when my mom's home was listed for sale. She hadn't really had any problems with the HOA over there other than the landscapers broke the sprinkler heads, and she doesn't go over onto her side yard, but apparently the side yard became saturated with this broken PVC sprinkler head, and so we had to address that with the HOA. And then you find out that the HOA really is not your homeowners, like your neighbors. They're a management company. So you're dealing with people you have no idea who. And it's just a property manager. And I've been a property manager, so I get it. They juggle problems. That's basically what that job is, problem management. Which, if you have things running smoothly, the problems don't just spring up. The problems are addressed as they come about so that they don't become more. Case in point was when my mom's home was for sale over there. I would drive by to make sure that everything was right and everything was good and sprinkler heads weren't broken and the ground wasn't flooded and, things like that had already happened there. And one day I drive up and, I'm like, la, 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 la. And I see all these construction trucks and guys standing around, like, the construction guys do, standing around looking at it. And I see what looks like, maybe this house had recently sold, and so there were new owners there. 2 guys, maybe 3. I'm not really sure what the whole thing that was going on there. At any rate, I pull up, and my mom's house is right there. It's on a bit of a curve going this way. So my mom's house is here, this neighbor's house is here, and these are like, I'm holding on to something right here that I'm going to show you guys in a minute. I'll just put it down. So my mom's driveway was, adjacent next to their driveway and then their front yard. Well, I'm like, hi guys, how's it going? What's shaking? And I see it kind of laid out because I had looked at things before I got out of the Jeep. And I'm thinking, are they putting in a circular driveway in the front yard? Like, they can't do that. And they had the equipment, the heavy equipment, like they were ready to, they had the lines drawn to cut the curb line. Like, I'm looking at it and thinking, my mom's house is for sale here. These guys are, I don't even know what they're doing. Apparently they don't know that they live in an HOA. And so I said, yo, what's shaking? And the guys are like, oh yeah, we're gonna put in a circular driveway, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not putting in a circular driveway. Everything has got to be stopped immediately. And I contacted the management company, and yeah, there's no circular driveway next door to the house that my mom eventually sold. But the audacity of people, like, what is going on? So that was over there at her HOA. Here in our HOA, everything's pretty quiet. We go to the meetings on occasion. We had some issues with regard to, not really anything until around maybe not even a year we were living here. We were out for a bike ride. It was after my mom had been taken from her care home in Maryland, and had been absconded. The police chief didn't know where she'd been taken. The facility had shut me out. And my husband and I'm like, I need to go for a bike ride. Like, I need to go just go do something. And so that's what we did. We went for a bike ride with our neighbor at the time. Actually, that wasn't that day. Our neighbor was not with us that day. A year and a half later, we went on another bike ride, and my neighbor was with us that time. And that was actually the time that I wrote the obituary for my mom. But this time was I looked it up to see what the date was that I notified our HOA of what had happened. And it was in May of 2017. And so we had taken a bike ride around the neighborhood. Oh, no, it wasn't 2017. I just pulled it up. 2018. So it was May 7th of 2018 that I notified our HOA about this incident that had happened while we were on a bike ride in our own neighborhood. And nothing was really done about that other than when I posted a warning on Nextdoor, we were threatened, like not by our HOA or what I believe to be any of our direct neighbors, but by other people. And like, I'm not talking about like a little poodle, that was barking on the front lawn. No, I'm talking about this. What was barking on the front lawn, racing back and forth, snarling. I'm going to get this so that it can be seen. I'm going to put it on the full screen so that it can be seen. Okay, let me get that out there. So this is what we encountered on our bike ride. And this huge, what I now know is a pit bull Staffordshire mix, came out of nowhere, racing back and forth on the front yard, like insane. It was spitting out. I mean, if it would have broken through what we realized it was behind, that it was behind on one of those invisible fences, if that thing had broken through, we would have been on the news as far as like killed on the street. That's because I found out after I posted the warning. This is what I found out. Because some of the people, even now, this did happen in our HOA. Some of the people in the HOA were defending this canine and the owner. Now, the owner is an 80-year-old woman who could never, ever, ever control that dog. Never. And had no control of it anyway because it's loose on the front yard behind an invisible fence. So when I posted the warning, this is what was told to me. That it's the sweetest dog, that it's scarred, because I knew that it had huge like scars all over its face, or like this dog looked like a demon from hell. I saw the fear on my husband's face. That's when I knew we were in deep doo-doo. So when I posted the warning, the feedback was that it's the sweetest dog, and that it's scarred from being wire muzzled and being used as a bait dog for dog fighting. This is some pit rescue that gave this 80-year-old lady this huge, massive, huge, probably 90-pound dog at least. I mean, I'll let you be the judge. So we notified the HOA, and nobody wanted to do anything about it. And we were wrong for warning others. That was how it got turned around. So then one of the board members at that time, his wife and them had a bully breed, and she started walking it in front of our house, like showing off, like this is we can do whatever we want. Which they can, indeed, have at it. But, if there's a concern, I'll be addressing that concern and warning others. And I got educated about pit bulls, and I learned a lot. about the dangers with pit bulls, Staffordshire Terriers, and also any of their mixed breeds. So apparently I'm the bad person for calling it out after, encountering this thing on a bike ride. So then, that kind of went by the wayside. But we also had another neighbor who began walking his dog down in front of our house, acting, like intimidating. That's exactly what it was. It was because I had made a complaint. Those with this type of breed of dog decided that they were entitled to intimidate. So this is another neighbor that started walking his out of nowhere for no reason. All of a sudden, this dude's letting it on the front yard, even though it's leashed. Still, the intimidation factor. So this was all while we lived down at the first house that we bought in this neighborhood. And then, like, I have dogs. We have dogs. I've always had dogs. We get along with the dog. They had a Doberman across the way. We were great friends with her. Rode bikes with them all along. I helped take care of her mom when her mom was with her as she was declining with her illness. I was able to go over and sit with her mom, go make her lunch, all that. They had a Doberman. I know dogs, and I also know bad dogs. So at any rate, then we ended up moving down here to this house that we're in now. And then here is what I was out in the backyard and at the greenhouse. And we were getting ready for spring. In fact, I think was pretty much what it was. And I'm covering up the address on that so I can play it for you. But I was out at the greenhouse, and I always carry my camera around. At that time, the camera. Now I carry my phone for YouTube content. But I heard people out in the neighborhood, whatever, the normal sounds of the neighborhood, kids next door, and then I heard a scream. Like a full-on little girl scream. And I just took my camera and I put it up above my head and I snapped a photo because I just didn't know, I couldn't figure out why that would be somebody screaming like that. And so then my husband was on the other side of the yard and I asked him if he heard anything and he said no. And I said, well, we need to play the videotape of our property. And sure enough, we did. And there was a pit bull next door, huge pit bull, knocked their kid clean out, and then went after her a second time. And we've got this on video and called animal control. Knew the HOA wasn't going to do anything. And I certainly wasn't going to open myself up for the intimidation again by reporting it to our HOA, who cared less the first time after we reported the first pit bull that came after us. Now we're witnessing this one right next door, along with it had been running loose in the neighborhood. So it gets loose. Why? Why is your dog getting loose? So anyways, I had the video of this. We cut and pasted it so that we could provide it to animal control. Animal control came out. The pit bull's still there. So then, we just deal with that. We carry pepper spray. We carry a zapper. We do the things that we need to do so that if that pit bull is, because, that's what we have to do in our own neighborhood. And in addition to not only that, but around the time that the probate matter was going on, we have this Mustang across the way that sounds like, one of the old muscle cars, which is all good and fine. I'm all about the muscle cars and, the vroom vrooms. But 4:15 in the morning, I don't want to hear that. No, I don't want to hear that thing start up, and I don't want to hear it roar by. Notified the HOA about that. They could care less. I just think, what's the point of the HOA? And so then sent a letter, to them to let them know that you're disturbing the peace at 4:15 a.m. and we really don't appreciate it. They cared less, kept on with their business. Then recently, through the time that, that I've been dealing with some medical issues, serious medical issues, there's been, the truck now, he leaves his Mustang at home, but he soups up his truck, leaves at 6 a.m., rumbles by. So, the way that my house is situated, our front living area bedroom is where I'm recovering and sleeping. Our bedroom, the main bedroom, is in the front of the house along, the roadway. Now we don't hear plenty of cars that come and go all day long. Don't hear a thing. But we have what goes on across the way, and we have what goes on next door with them now deciding that parking in this turnout, because we live on a one dead-end street. So our neighborhood is very private. There's no business being in here unless you have a business being in here. And so all of a sudden there's these cars that are suddenly deciding that they're going to park in the turnout, because the turnout is halfway down to the dead end for emergency access. It's a turnout, where cars, trucks, equipment, trailers can realize that, oh gosh, I'm on a dead-end street. I didn't mean to be here. Let me turn around. Delivery, FedEx, UPS, any of that, that's a turnout. All of a sudden, the neighbors next door decide that they're going to start parking in the turnout, and that's acceptable behavior, and that's what they're going to do. And then this little car that's being parked there has a muffler and that vibrates the entire area, sitting there driving me like flipping nuts, as I'm trying to recover from medical issues, and might have peace and quiet in my own home, not be woken up by vehicle noise, not be witnessing things with pit bulls, and then not having to look at cars parked out in the turnout. Whose car is that? Why are they parked in the turnout? Oh, they don't have enough room in their driveway. Well, why is that? Why don't they have enough room in their driveway? Because they have trailers with kayaks, another trailer with a boat, and trash cans and other debris. Where's our HOA? Hello? So after not getting a response from our HOA, at the last HOA meeting, I all of a sudden heard that the street rep was available, the position. So I said, I'll volunteer for that. And that's what I did. So I became the street rep for my street for the HOA. Now, we're a very small HOA. I'm not an HOA kind of gal. I could care less what people do, but don't be stupid and don't be retarded with your animals or your loud vehicles, parking, leaving at times that disturb the entire neighborhood, or at least, me. So I have a right to say something about that and for it to be taken seriously. So I became the street rep, and the HOA was in need because the HOA has been lackadaisical, lax, unwilling to take the next step to actually address issues. So at the HOA meeting, I said, okay, let's go do these things. I'm happy to do it. I told the one lady, the treasurer, I'm like, I'm recovering from, double mastectomy, two cancer surgeries. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for volunteering. And yeah, let's get this done. We can't have our governing documents with language omitted while properties are being sold with the improper missing language that somehow got omitted. That's a problem, people. So they recognize that that's a problem, and they're trying to get it addressed. So we're knocking on doors before Thanksgiving. They want everybody to do a vote. They add all these random things in there to make people confused, instead of just focusing on the one thing that the bylaws needed, which was to get the language back in there, or whatever is really going on. I really don't have a firm handle on it all, but I'll get there. At this juncture, though, I'm doing the bidding of the HOA as the street rep. Happy to do it. Love meeting my neighbors. My husband and I are knocking on doors, meeting our neighbors, talking with them, learning more about the HOA and the history of it, and that a lot of the people on our street didn't even want the HOA to be in existence to begin with. And so, that stops them from participating or doing a vote. And I tell them, hey, I get it. Like, I'm with you. I understand completely. Let me tell you what happened to me with the HOA I lived in. So I understand. However, the fact of the matter is that you do live in an HOA. So you do need to vote regardless. If you are a homeowner in an HOA, then you are bound to participate by voting. And if the board cannot get enough votes for something to pass, then something needs to change in the bylaws if people aren't voting. And it should be not of the homeowners, the quorum. It should the percentage of votes that we need. It should be by those returning the votes. So I myself, my husband and I knocked doors. We got results. We don't care how you vote, just please vote. Right? And that gets responses because we're honest. Because, yeah, I don't like an HOA either, And so after doing all that around Thanksgiving, and not just one time going out and knocking on doors, but many times. Let's just say that, many times, because some people we knew might be at home but weren't there right then. Some people, so I pulled in oftentimes to one house that never even answered. So I have no idea. But the fact of the matter is that the rest of us answered. So the rest of us, our voice does matter. And also when complaints are made, when there are issues in the neighborhood, like against the CCNRs, that's what I asked the HOA for after they didn't respond to me, after I volunteered for them being the street rep. I asked them about the street parking. What's going on with the street parking? I sent an email. This is what's happening. Sent pictures. Got no response. Got a phone call. Oh, well, let me know if it becomes habitual, this, that, or the other. Never responded in writing to me. But when I began letting them know that it was habitual now, it was happening overnight. And not only that, they were parking the wrong way coming down the street. And now, because it was happening on this side, the other neighbors started allowing their people to start parking in the turnout. So now I feel like I'm back living in Upper Darby, where I have to look out of my window and see all the cars lined up in the street. No. I do not live in Upper Darby anymore. I live in an HOA. An HOA that has a turnout at a dead-end street where it is a now public road. It is a county governed by the Delaware State Police. And our HOA told me, yeah, it's allowed. They can park there anytime they want. So I only found that out after sending 5 emails to them with photos asking for feedback. They never responded to those emails. So then at the board meeting last Saturday, I didn't respond to their email about that, about who's coming to the board meeting. And I just showed up at the designated time. And they're all sitting out there happy as can be. And then I show up and it's like, oh, we need to get you a chair. And, there's one man on the scene. He doesn't even get up. So the lady's treasurer gets up and gives me her heavy chair. And I carry it over, and sit down and start listening, writing, taking notes. And, everything that we had tried to do in November, none of that mattered because we didn't get enough votes. So the level of insanity that I encounter with this HOA, I actually ordered a flag. I haven't flown it yet. But here we go. You want to see? It's a good one. There it is. Defund the HOA. And I thought this was going to be like a little yard flag, but no, look at this thing. It's massively huge. So, yeah, I probably will not be actually flying that flag yet. But I am so disgusted by my HOA right now that that's why I'm making this video. Because when I went to that board meeting, they're like, "Oh yeah, well, parking in the turnout's allowed." And then all of them were like, "Oh yeah, people park in our cul-de-sac all the time." And I'm like, "Oh, so like, where are the rules though? I've asked you all for the CC&Rs that we're bound by." And then they're like, "Oh, well, that's only 2 pages." I'm like, "No, I remember it being like 9, 10, 11 pages." Yeah, they ended up sending out the CC&Rs to everybody again, as I had suggested. They are going to try and change the bylaws, but they weren't going to tell anybody at this upcoming meeting. I'm like, of course you need to tell people. They have to prepare for it. And then I said, how about everybody going out and knocking on doors as a committee, as a group? We are your HOA. You know what they did? They took an immediate vote and said no. You know what it was like? It was like walking into the Mean Girls table at the cafeteria in the middle school. That's what I felt like on Saturday. I kid you not. For no reason other than that I have spoken up. And I have said these things I will not be a part of. That's pit bulls on the front yard behind invisible fences. Dog training businesses being operated in our neighborhood. What? In fact, when I left the HOA meeting on Saturday, the board meeting, what was standing over there on the other side of the street? A pit bull with, I believe, the trainer dog. The trainer who is running a business out of our community, training pit bulls. What? We're not. That's not a business. That you don't run a business like that out of a neighborhood where there are little kids and elderly people. No. Anyways, so it was like that. And then here's the other thing. I had asked about, what are we doing about that property where all the cars are being accumulated, that are junk cars and now heavy equipment, and the weeds are growing up all around it. And you know what? This was towards the end of the meeting, and the head of the HOA says, "Oh, well, they're having an illness in their family, so we don't really want to pursue that. We're just kind of letting it be for right now." I'm like, "Excuse me?" Because just 10 minutes earlier, when I had said about having, 2 cancer surgeries this year and trying to deal with, the nonsense over here on my street, one of the other board members said, "Oh, well, everybody's dealing with something, so, whatever." And so I told the board president when he said that they're just letting that go because they have an illness in their family. I said, how about somebody responding to me about when I say that I have an illness in my family? That's a double standard. And that's what one of the other board members said. The board has been accused of, operating under a double standard. I said, well, if, where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't even know what to say about that. But what I do know, what I'm going to say is that I'm going to go to the board meeting or to the HOA meeting on Saturday, and I'm going to talk about these things. Because don't come around here and try and make me out as if I'm the bad person for actually seeing what is going on, asking about it, talking about it, requesting direction on what we are as the HOA. Because when I was told at the board meeting that, oh yeah, that's allowed, you're allowed to park in the turnout, we're county roads, we're under Delaware State Police. Well, I looked that up then. If we're under county roads and we're not private roads, guess what? No, that's restricted access for emergency vehicles, particularly in subdivisions. So the board is just like, what? They don't want to have anything in writing. They have not responded to me ever in writing to any of my notices to them about what's going on in my own neighborhood. And now that I'm the street rep, the feeling that I left that board meeting was that they extremely very much dislike me. And you know what? I don't care. I could care less. I'm not there to make friends with these people. I'm a vested owner in this neighborhood, and we have a gem of a neighborhood, and it needs to be preserved. And if it's not preserved, then we will no longer have a gem of a neighborhood. And that is precisely the reason that homeowners associations were put in place in the first place, to mandate a certain level of cleanliness, tidiness, civility. And that was the other thing that the board members asked me. Oh, well, have you spoken to your neighbors about this? Parking in the turnout and loud mufflers, 7 a.m., this guy over here, variations on his engine. He goes over there and plays with it and then has some sort of a thing where he can make it louder or so. It's insane. And this is all permeating noise that goes into our home. Not from anybody else. We don't hear this from any other vehicles. And if you are in an area where there might become one of those data centers, AI data centers, you better be involved with your local board about that and be in opposition, because those things make a humming noise too. And people are going cuckoo, cuckoo, because noises matter a lot. And when there are invasive noises into a home by, traffic noise or whatever, it has a negative impact on people's quality of life and their mental health and their physical health as well. So anyways, that's my rant on doggone HOAs. And what I will absolutely do is speak up. I will absolutely continue to speak up about this. And they know it. The board knows that I intend to speak about this at the HOA meeting coming up. And that I have put forth the effort on behalf of the HOA. And then they showed me zero respect, zero interest in what I was reporting to them as a board member, as a street rep, happening on my street. And it's not just on my street where there are problem, homes, but also on another street. That's clearly obvious when you ride a bike through our neighborhood. So why aren't we addressing that? And I get things like, oh, we tried. And then one of the board members is like, well, maybe we could find a pro bono lawyer. And I just sat there quietly because I'm like, these people think a lawyer is going to do work on their behalf for free? Like, yeah, we don't pay a lot of HOA fees, but that's not on the homeowners currently. This HOA has been in existence for a long time. So a lot of people paid very little, and now the HOA says that they don't have money for legal counsel to enforce their CC&Rs, or even a second letter or a knock on the door from the committee, the board. That's what the board is there for. And if you don't want to do that, then you sub it out to a management company and you let them do the dirty work. Like, I'm not interested in doing any kind of, position on the board, anything like that. No, that is not what this is about. What this is about is enforcing what the rules are in our own neighborhood, not sit back and do nothing about it and then ghost the people who are reporting it. And that's the part that gets me the maddest, is being ghosted by those people and then acting like I'm the problem. So the other thing with the ghosting thing was the Delaware Breast Cancer Coalition in my area. And those ladies did the same thing to me. These are the be kind people. Oh, we have to be kind. We can't tell them to remove their abandoned, unregistered, rusting vehicles out of their yard. No, they have illness in their family. We need to be kind. What? No, you need to send a letter and then follow up. And then if they don't get the cars out of there and all the rotting equipment and everything else that the other neighbors are complaining about, and if you can't get action, then you get a lawyer and then you put a lien on their property or whatever the next step is. And if we don't have next steps in our HOA, then defund the HOA. Then what's the purpose? What's the point? What am I paying money for? We have no street lamps. We have no sidewalks. People are forced to walk in the street around here. And then when there's cars parked in the turnout, guess what? It's a danger to the children that are riding their bikes on the streets. It's a danger to the elderly people who take their walks. or walk their dogs. So at some point, the HOA must act. And I even went so far as to look up what is the homeowner's recourse if the HOA is not acting. And of course, there is recourse. Now, nobody wants to take that to a state agency and go down that angle, but it certainly is an opportunity, a possibility. It's what we're left to do if the HOA is not acting on behalf of those who are making valid complaints. So, and it wasn't just me with the noises coming from the vibrating car that's parking in the turnout. There was one of the dog walkers that we met. We know who this is. And she said she's coming to the HOA meeting. So that's the only way to get involved. And if people don't want to be involved and have an HOA and the HOA has no way of enforcing it, then what's the point? Somebody please educate me, because I don't understand that at all. But if I need to become an actual board member, I will. And then, we'll see where it goes from there. But it won't be, the be kind era. That's long gone. People need to do what they're supposed to do, like all the rest of us are doing, right? We follow the rules. We park our equipment and our, recreational vehicles and everything else where we're supposed to. And we don't take up space on the roadway that's already limited because we have all of our crap lined up in our driveway, which clearly in our HOA documents, number 6, it says they can't be there. But then I'm treated like I'm the problem for bringing it up. I reject that. I'm sorry. I continue to reject when there is a deny, attack, reverse onto me as being the see something, say something, when I'm actually the street rep for the HOA. If I don't say something, who's going to say something? Nobody. And that's just the way the HOA likes it. And then one other thing that I will say, and I need to do a FOIA on this, a Freedom of Information Act request for the animal catcher, because the animal control was at that house a couple of weeks ago, and it wasn't us who called this time. And the new people moved in on the other side. And that's where they've been harboring that pit bull on the other side, because they already know that we saw the pit bull take down their little girl on video camera, knock her clean out. And then the little boy's trying to hold the pit bull back. And guess what? The pit bull went after her a second time. It's all on video. So the whole thing about when you see something, say something, no. That's only meant so that they can know who's making the complaint, so that they can consider you to be the problem. So fight back to that nonsense. Stand your ground. Don't allow people to push you around when there are verifiable incidences happening that go against the HOA. If the HOA is in place, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You either address the rules with everybody or you address the rules with nobody. And then what? Who's going to do the snow removal then? So the HOA, that's all we really get out of this HOA is snow removal. And I'll tell you what, this year when there was a blizzard, we were real happy to have that snow removal, because those guys did a bang up job. Now, are they going to be there next year for us? No. This was just the luck of the draw that the HOA got this outstanding crew to do our HOA. So we don't even have anybody that we're providing work with over the years to be able to get reduced price with the snow removal. So maybe all the homeowners just need to pay for the cost of the snow removal every year. No pool, no community center, no street lights, no sidewalks. What are we paying for? No HOA, no response. So that's the part that gets me. I respond to things. If people send me an email, I respond to it, but not when they've blown me off for my past 5 emails. And I told them that at the board meeting too, and they didn't like that. Too bad. The truth is the truth. And if people don't like hearing the truth, that's not on the truth teller. That's on the people who don't want to hear the truth. So I've had it turned back around on me to where I was made to be the problem within CC&Rs, and I was the problem under the CC&Rs, and I had to address that, and I did. And other people need to have that same level of enforcement put onto them, because now I'm a homeowner in an HOA, and there's rules, so those need to be enforced. And I saw the way that the board meetings went when I was managing homeowners associations out in California. Small-minded people who all of a sudden think that they're extremely important. And they're not, but they have power. They have legal power behind them. And if an HOA chooses not to enforce existing HOA rules and regulations, then those of us who are impacted negatively will take issue with that. So you may end up getting lawyer's fees even though you don't want to have to hire a lawyer. Because when people get fed up enough, then they take action. And I'm fed up enough right now with what we've been made to put up with in this neighborhood, just right here in our own little corner, that I've written it, I've put it in writing, I've addressed it with the board, and now I will take it to the meeting. And I've spoken up in meetings before. And when we get into those meetings, that's when the real truth comes out, like selective enforcement. And the street rep who was the street rep before me, that was why he's no longer the street rep, is because he saw what was going on with the selective enforcement, and he didn't like it. And that's what was said to us. So we have more information about the things that have gone on, and why people have such a bad attitude toward this HOA. It's for good reason. And the reasons are continuing, and now I've personally experienced them. So the lived experience is my own, and I intend to, as I said in my email, not tolerate it, at least not quietly. And case in point was this morning at 7 a.m. across the street, the car alarm's going off for 10 minutes. I have it on video. Yeah, at least 7 minutes it was going off, the car alarm. Why? What is that? These are the kinds of things that are going on right in my little area. And the noise and disturbing of the peace, it just won't be tolerated, because I'm a homeowner. I work to own a home in an HOA where there are rules. I expect those rules to be enforced. So that's my whole rant. And, when we have personal experiences on things, then guess what? And one of the ladies at the HOA meeting asked me why I hate dogs. I'm like, what? I don't hate dogs. I have dogs. I've been a dog walker. I have dogs all my life. I used to take my daughter on my dog walking gigs. In fact, this is one of the pictures of my daughter. And we were out on a snowy day doing the dog walking. That doggy right there was named Taylor. That was a standard sized poodle. She had a brother named Phineas. And we walked these dogs on these huge palatial estates on the main line of Philadelphia, with our coffees in hand. But she asked me that, and I'm like, no, I don't hate dogs. It was so wild. I felt like I was at the Mean Girl table in 7th grade in the cafeteria with one man present who's the president board. And in fact, our neighbor who moved down south, she said that she had an encounter with this board president, and she said it did not go well. So that's the only information I have from anybody else about him other than my own personal experiences. And he did not like me at all being called out, or also telling his wife, don't not respond to my emails. If I send you an email, I expect a response. This is the board. We're on the board. So he didn't like that I called her out for, how about a response? And then when I show up to the board meeting, oh, well, we didn't know if you were coming. Yeah, because I didn't respond to your email because you didn't respond to mine. But here I am. Retarded, right? Jeez, the HOA just needs to do their job. That's all. Enforce the CC and Rs. So anyways, frustrating because I expect that there's respect given and it's reciprocal or not. Have a great day.